going live now. All right, we are live, and guess what? I like using this platform because it tells me it shares automatically. So, good morning, happy Sunday, everybody. As you are joining and hopefully seeing this, which I do need to do a better job promoting this. I'm going to do our intro in a second, but first I'm going to go to the Coach Cara page and share this over to my going to go to the Coach Cara page. Okay, that's not cool. And share this over to my Facebook page. Okay.
And I
And
think since we're finally friends,
we are.
you can tag me.
We are. Okay. All right. That is done. All right. So, welcome to what I have recently renamed um, the Rebirth Experience with Coach Cara or Coach K. Um, and I am joined by my co host, Charlena Anita. You can see her right there. And, our goal is to bring you mature content, information, wisdom, etc., to help you have your own rebirth experience. And because I've just recently changed the name, and I will be changing this name on multiple social media handles, I wanted to explain the reason for that. I shared with Charlena earlier that I've learned that, we spend our lifetime, our childhood we're raised by our parents with their ideologies and whatever they think is best at the time. Some people treat that as the Bible, because mama said it or your grandmother said it or, whatever the case may be. However, in our 20s, I think it's really natural that we start questioning some of that. I've dealt with that with my own children in their 20s. And when you become an adult, you have the unique opportunity and privilege to reparent yourself. Um, and you should, because to not do it is an assumption that your parents did it perfectly. And anybody who is a parent knows that that's impossible. And
Mhm.
so I started the Rebirth Experience when I was health coaching, and the name just kind of fell onto me because that's what I felt like I was having. And now I'm in a different part of that journey. I've been doing a lot more internal mind, body, spirit work. And I'm going to get back into the health focus, but that won't be the focus of the Rebirth Experience anymore. It will be more so about um, empowering others with the tools to reparent themselves in a way. Now, you're not going to agree with everything that you hear said, that you hear us say. Some things you may vehemently disagree. And that's okay. We're not always going to agree with each other, and I'm not going to agree with every guest that comes on here. But I seek to understand even when I don't agree with people, and I hope that you will do the same. You don't have to agree with every single thing that a person says in order, to for it to have value. There's things that you can learn from people and you still don't agree. You've talked for a whole hour and you don't agree, but maybe you can get to a place of understanding. And so with that being said, we are very laid back here. Okay. We are not perfect. Things are not going to be perfect. And every Sunday that we're here together, we're going to share our beverages and our latest happenings. And so I think we're going to start with a little recap of my guest, Charlena Anita. So the first couple of episodes, we're talking about divorce. And we don't know how long we're going to stay on this topic, but essentially right now, kind of how did you come to a place where you decided to get a divorce? And last week, Charlena shared her process with us and what that was about. And today I will be sharing mine. But Charlena, let me turn it over to you to open up anything you want to share with everybody before we jump in.
So I think, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So I think that what I'm going to share is right in alignment with Coach K introducing the rebranding of these interactions, the rebirth experience with Coach K. And so, what I want to share is, and it's so interesting that you should mention parenting because this is all in alignment. So, what I want to share is these words, very simple. Will it be easy? No. Will it be worth it? Absolutely. And so, anybody who, for the women, of course, out there that have given birth to a child, you know what that experience is like. It's very, very painful. You go through things that your body goes through things, and probably your mind too, that you could never imagine. But on the other side of all of that pain is this beautiful life that you have given birth to. And so I want you to take those words, and as we move along in our journey of the rebirth experience, I want you to think about the journey, that it will not be easy, but it will be worth it. Will it be easy? No. Will it be worth it? Absolutely.
All right, that was so good. I was taking a note. Um, okay. Yes. Thank you for that. And you know what? I'm so grateful to you for your transparency and everything that you shared last week. And I really hope that there's a couple more people that I'm hoping we can talk to, because everybody's journey to come to that place is different. And I want to make sure that anybody who's out there kind of can see a reflection of themselves. And also, there's a lot of assumptions that people make when they hear you're splitting up around why they think it's
Mhm.
happening. And so it's also nice to get the truth out there. You know what I'm saying? Um, I don't really know where to start. So
But
I
before you start, do you have a beverage for the day?
Oh, yes, that's right. So I have my trusty water as always, although I'm out. I have to run out right after this and get more. I'm not fancy yet, Charlena, but so I have coffee here in my Tervis mug that I just got yesterday on clearance at Publix, and it's absolutely delicious. My favorite creamer is by Silk. It's called the oatmeal cookie one.
Okay.
I tried to like other kinds. I tried like 3 times and they're not good. And I want to enjoy my coffee experience. It's a big thing to me. It sets the tone for my day and I want to enjoy it. And so I love the silk oatmeal cookie one. And then I'm drinking this I never get through all of these, but I have to have lots of beverages. I don't know why. Uncle Matt's Ultimate Immune Builder. This is so yummy. Now, it doesn't make sense to buy this size because it comes in a big, huge container, but I never finished that. So then it's like, am I really saving money if I'm wasting it anyway? So I got the smaller one. I will tell you that if I had some Prosecco, I would have put this in, mixed it with this. I've done that before at a girls' retreat. I did this with, it was either Prosecco or like a brut champagne from Mimosa, and everybody was going nuts over it, you know? And so I this is really good. It does have orange juice in it. So it's but it also it feels like the elderberry and the zinc is going to knock out whatever negativity is trying to come through from the alcohol. What are you drinking?
Listen, very basic. I'm sticking with Old Faithful. It's a mimosa again. This is this one I believe is mango pineapple. So you know I'm very lightweight, so I have like half prosecco, half juice, and then of course, add a little bit of extra with some fresh strawberries,
A
and
little bit of
that, that's it for me. Hmm.
Okay, so I just swallowed that wrong. Here's my burning question for you. Did this prosecco? Can you just refrigerate it when you're done? Because my thing is, what am I going to do with the rest of this bottle? Is that what you do? Or
Listen, no, you get the little. I know it's probably not most cost effective, but you wind up wasting the rest of the bottle when you buy a big one and it's just you. So I get
oh,
the little mini bottles. It's just one serving. So this whole
I
glass,
should have known that.
literally, this is half a bottle, and then the other half. Excuse me. This is a whole bottle plus juice. So this is half prosecco, half juice. So
Okay.
yeah, that works.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to do that. And I've seen those. It's like you said, they're not cost effective. So you're
Mhm.
thinking, why would I do that? But I do need to just switch to the small bottles because I absolutely love Prosecco. And I can't think of what, I think it's Yes Your Way Rosé. That one is super good. They're not all the same. So, but anyway, I'm gonna get my act together for next week. Um, I think I'm a bit nervous to talk about this, and I think that's why I'm dragging.
Mm.
Um, I don't know what that is because I'm such a sharer. Um,
So let me be the interviewer today.
yeah, 'cause you know what, Charlena,
Which
and
I wouldn't say that I am. I'm
I,
not. But
well,
I
I
need.
want you to do it naturally. Otherwise, I'll just be yakking for the next 50 minutes. But I think that one of the challenges is when you've had, a decades long relationship that was decades long, there is no one thing. There's no one thing that leads to the end. And so I think that because I've had, and thank you for joining. I see you in the comments. Because I've had just so much therapy and just thought and all this self work, is like, how do I pack that in? And then I don't want to bash him. Although I have my moments where I feel like I want to do that. And so before we even go into it, let me start with that part because um, in the past, there are people who've seen me say things online, or, there was one podcast I did in particular that just really, when it set him off in the wrong direction. I got to share my story. I got to share my truth. It's my decision to do so. My children lived through this. They already know anything that I would possibly say, and they're fine. It's just I'm not worried anymore about what people think, but I hope that I've had enough healing work to be able to share my story in a way that helps people. But through anything I say, it is not my intention to further harm him. And I know that he wouldn't even believe that right now. So for the audience, I told him I wanted a divorce in November of 2022. So I just want to share the timing. So it's been about 2 years, which is still pretty fresh.
Mhm.
Okay, here. Let me try popping this comment up here. Yes. Talk about behaviors, not the person. That would be helpful. Okay. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But yes, it's been about 2 years. Even if I just talk about behaviors, when you're sharing your truth, you have to make peace with it first. I'm going to share it. I'm going to say it. I hope I get it right, even though we're not in a good place, and I don't know if we'll ever be. Um, I hope that he prospers, whether he believes it or not. I would love to see him happy, healed, whole. On his feet and doing everything that he would desire to do, because that would be better for my children. And I think eventually we would get along better. But that I'm saying that because that doesn't mean that I don't, nothing that I'm saying is against him. I'm just sharing the truth. All right. I'm rambling already.
Yes. Let's
Cut me off.
let's start at the beginning. Start at the beginning.
Okay. Of what? The relationship itself?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to be a bit speedy here. Okay. I'm going to jump around a bit. Hey, Tori. Um, I met him in 1996, I think, at church. That's supposed to be where you're supposed to meet your person, right? He was a bit younger than me. I was not interested at the time. After a year of I was dating other people or whatever, he approached me again, and I said yes. Essentially, we moved in fairly quickly. I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time. He helped me a lot with my daughter, and I thought we were like besties, And I was 25 and he was 22. Um, After about 3 years in Virginia, and the relationship was not without issues. Does I can't get if I get into every single thing, we'll be here all week. But I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time. I may or may not have said that, and I just didn't like it. Did not like Richmond, Virginia at all. I never fit in. I was there 4 years, and I spent most of my time in DC because I just did not. I couldn't find my tribe there. Like I'd have my little gatherings and invite people over. Nothing stuck. Um, I had a couple good relationships with coworkers, but that was it. So after the at 4 year mark, January of 2000, I told him flat out, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live here anymore. My parents are getting older, and I wanted to move to closer to my hometown, which is St. Louis, Missouri. And so I picked Atlanta for that reason only, not because it was hot Atlanta and everybody was here, but for that reason only. And he didn't at that time want to move the relationship forward or whatever. And so I moved down to Atlanta by myself with my daughter. I did a job transfer, so it worked out seamlessly. And after he helped me move down here, it was, kind of emotional or whatever. And then after I was here for about 6 weeks, we didn't talk for several weeks. He called me out of the blue and said, um, I think we should get married. And I was like, what? So I was surprised. But my parents had already been pressuring me to get married. Let me be clear, I had no idea what marriage meant, what it was about, what I should be looking for, what I needed in a partner, um, what I could give to a partner, nothing. Um, my parents were married 40 years before my father passed away, but it was not a loving marriage. It was they were just kind of existing. It's not like I saw them arguing and stuff all the time, but they weren't connected. So, and that's a whole nother podcast, right? That's a whole nother episode talking about the influence of our, parentals and stuff like that. It's a big thing. You
Mhm.
really need to deal with that before you get married because your parents' stuff is
Mhm.
going to show up in your marriage.
Mhm.
Oh, I wish we could go there now.
Your
Um,
parents as a couple and your parents as individuals, who they are individually.
1,000%, because that is a top reason why I married, and it's also a top reason why I divorced. Both of us had a lot of toxic shit from our parents in the marriage, and unhealed stuff too. And I
Mhm.
think that had we been healed, we would have realized from the beginning we weren't compatible. That's what I think. I don't think it would have made the marriage work. I think we would have realized, oh, we're not what each other needs, right? Okay, so he moved to Atlanta after that, and we were engaged for about a year. There was some at least emotional infidelity on his part after he moved to Atlanta, but yet another topic for the future, could be infidelity, because I dealt with it in every relationship to that point. And so when I dealt with infidelity in the relationship with him, I was completely desensitized. And I'm saying this way too fast, but I want to put that on the parking lot because I was totally desensitized by this point, to the point where I was angry when things happened, but I never even thought about leaving. And I didn't divorce him because he was unfaithful. It was just one more thing in the bowl. It's almost like I had accepted that this is what men do. And so that wasn't the thing that bothered me. Um, but anyway, we ended up eloping, and 2 weeks after we eloped, he was like, "This was a mistake." Okay, but I found out I was pregnant. So his family did
So
not know.
did he tell you that? Did he say those
Yes,
words
he
to you?
said that. Yes,
Okay, when you say this was a mistake, what was a mistake?
us getting
The
married.
marriage
Yes,
or
he
the eloping?
no, 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 the marriage. He felt
Okay.
like it was a mistake that we got married. He was bad. And what was crazy is when we were engaged, he had his body was telling him not to do it. He had
Mhm.
developed these circular patterns in his beard where there was absolutely no hair at all. It was just like so totally smooth. And it's never happened since then. And so I think everything in his body didn't want to do it. But he thought, well, maybe I'm just nervous, because she's a great catch or whatever. And so we got married, and 2 weeks after that I found out I was pregnant. And that's when he tells his family, who didn't he hadn't even acknowledged to his family that he was engaged. That's another massive red flag. If you're planning engagement and your partner isn't even telling the people closest to them, right? And so I don't at that time I had a lot of pressure from my parents to get married because I was a single parent, like lots of pressure. And it almost felt like he was the person that was willing. And so I'm going to do this. And I remember him saying to me one day, do you want me or do you want the relationship? Like the
A
marriage.
marriage,
Like, every
a
now and
marriage,
then, every
me
now
or
and then he would
a
drop
marriage.
some deep bombs. Yeah.
Was wow, that was yeah, that was pretty significant.
I
They
couldn't
were very
separate the two.
right.
I couldn't separate the two.
And that's a very interesting point. Just quick pause. I'm gonna let you continue, but that is a very interesting point because many times as women, because we are raised to be married, to have a husband and be a wife, many times we can choose someone because we want to be married, not necessarily married to them, but we want to be married.
I think so many women are still doing that right now. And for me, it's actually a flag, a yellow flag when somebody says, I want to be married, and like we said, we were going to start talking at some point about like Love is Blind, some of the love shows. Now, those are going to be some great episodes when we do those. But yeah, when I see people like super pumped, and it almost like felt like, I guess I was, no, not I guess, let me slow down. Now having fast forwarded 30 years and come through so much therapy, and I've told you this before, I realized that from the time I got pregnant with my firstborn at 20, 21, I was constantly trying to redeem my image and come out of shame. So
That's,
much of
that's
what I
exactly
did.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's a part of your beginning as well
Yes.
that led you to your decision to get married.
Yeah. It was trying to clean it up.
Mhm.
That's why I got my college degree. That's why I should have kept some tissues nearby because I really do feel like I might start crying. But I had my daughter, my firstborn, when I was 21, and I wrote a paper in the hospital. She was not my priority. Okay. I had to stay in school. I went back to class a week later. I took no time off.
So I want to ask, first, let me do this. I want to actually give kudos to your ex-husband for having the insight and the strength to pose that question to you about do you just want a marriage or do you really want to marry me? I mean that took a lot for him to do that and the insight to have that awareness. So kudos
Yeah.
to him for that.
Yeah. He said, "Do you want me or do you just want to be married?" And I think he knew that I just wanted to be married. Um, so anyway, um, he had to tell his mother in one conversation. And I remember him saying it. We got married and Cara's pregnant. And
Mm.
this was to a group of people who did not care for me. And I to this day, I don't know why. I do think that his family knew I wasn't his partner, that I wasn't supposed to be his partner. I think they always knew that. Um, but I don't, I just, I've never been able to figure out why I was not accepted. Because if it was going to be about they didn't like how I treated him, they also knew he treated me poorly. So why was the onus more on me? I don't know. And I'm not trying to solve that riddle anymore. I don't care at
Yeah,
all.
I mean,
I,
but
I'm just as happy to be
that
free of his family as I literally the celebration is equal. I'm just as happy to
as
be
they
free of
are
the
happy.
as I am to be free of
Here.
the in-law.
Okay.
And
So you
it's not.
know what, Kara, I want you to get back into you
Yes.
and I've had several conversations about, what led you to or made the decision, made what led you to make the decision to choose to marry him. You talked about, being a single mother and what you felt you deserved, what you felt you were worthy of because
Right.
of what you felt, for lack of a better word, the baggage that you came or you were carrying, and with that baggage, what you felt you were worthy of. So, can you explore that?
Yeah. Okay, so this part is going to be challenging because I feel like it's going to sound like I'm diminishing him, and I'm not, okay? But there is a thing about being equally yoked. And when two people are not equally yoked, what that looks like. It's not religion, it's a broad thing. So I'm planting that right there. But
Well, I think one of the things that you've said in the past, and not specifically about his personal characteristics, but just the choosing of someone that you kind of knew really wasn't the person for you, nor you the person for him, but because you had this other baggage of being a single mom and wanting and maybe some guilt and lack of feeling
yeah,
worthy, you just felt that marriage was going to now make all of that
that
right.
that's what I'm
So
saying.
he
It
just
would
happened
legitimize.
right. He just happened to be the person. Nothing so much about him and who he was,
Yes.
but just a person that was willing, was
Willing to do it.
marry you and legitimize you.
I felt like um it would legitimize me being a single parent. Everything I did was about that. And
Mhm.
so um I remember there was a guy that I dated when I was 24, the year before I started dating him. There were two different guys I dated that led me down further down this crash course. And the first guy was 28, and he told me flat out that he had 2 degrees and he had his pick of the litter, and he didn't have to choose someone who had a child,
Mm.
you know. And it stuck to me.
Mhm.
It just like stuck to me. It was like somebody put a letter to my forehead. This was the 90s. Like now everybody's doing this. It's not even a big deal. Even though men still dog women with children, in the 90s, this wasn't cool at all. And especially within a religious denomination. On top of that, you are used. It's proven that you're used because you
Mhm.
have a child.
Mhm.
So there was that incident, and that I did like that guy a lot. And then there was another guy I dated for a couple of months, who we had a strong connection. But other people interfered and it split up. And that was right around the time where my ex-husband asked me for my phone number again because I would see him at church. And so at that point, I was like, well, you tried these other things, it didn't work. Who cares? So I fell into it from a very vulnerable place. And then because I thought we got along so well, I felt like this is a good thing. He was
Mhm.
so opposite of my father, which is what I thought I needed. My father was a very dominant, very like my father. That was the law. It was like God Himself spoke whenever He said anything. And but my father was negative with it towards my mother. So for me, that type of man is a no go. That was the message I told myself. If I don't want to end up like my mother, I should not be with a dominant man.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I became a dominant female, which is again on the list on the parking lot for another topic. And so anyway, so we got married. You know, we ended up having a kid within the first year. His family thought that I had trapped him and that I was already pregnant, but it was never true. But this is what I'm saying: you can have your truth; it doesn't matter. You got to know it for yourself because people are going to believe whatever they want. And my mother felt like I trapped him. Like it's not like he was bringing a lot to the relationship. You know what I'm saying? I was a college graduate. I had a budding career. You know, I was making good money and going up and up and up. And he was constantly in a journey of trying to find himself, um, throughout the entire relationship. So anyway, just to kind of fast forward a bit, because you know this could get too long. We were married for about 4 years, and the marriage was absolutely awful. Like never twist a man's arm if he's having doubts. People need to learn how to back up and say, "Let me give you some time until you can sit in this and be sure," right? Because it was just terrible. And there are incidents that happened in that marriage that I don't know that I'll ever share, because it was so long ago. I wouldn't want the present version of him to be judged by some of those things from so early on. So I may share those things privately, but I don't know that I would ever do it publicly unless there was some kind of purpose to it. So after in 2005, 2004, we split up and got divorced in 2005. It was finalized. And we both dated other people. We co-parented wonderfully. He lived about 10 minutes away from me. He took up just as much time with my firstborn daughter as he did with the secondborn. So my family loved him for that. I'm thinking we're in this great friendship, et cetera, et cetera. Um, After 3 years, I there was somebody that I had met, super strong connection with, and we hit it off. And I'm like, oh, this is the one. It fell apart. And right around that same time, my ex-husband was like, you should give me another chance. I remember he looked at me in the driveway of my this house I was renting and said, if you don't give me another chance, you're always going to regret it, because at the end of the day, you know I'm a good guy.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I was out here 3 years and I tried all these things. It was literally the exact same broken thought process. And then I spent a ton of time thinking about, I'm going to be able to help him, with all these things. Oh, he's trying. Look at him putting effort into these things. I can build that. I can support that. I gave no thought at all to my needs because that felt selfish. It felt selfish to think about what I might actually need from a man. That was something I'd never thought about. I'm not worth getting my needs met. How dare I? Look at my shame and my bad decisions. And I'd had other people tell me, you make bad decisions. If you knew what you were doing, you'd already be married and you'd already be this. And I internalized all of that. So when he said that, I was like, I okay. And I let myself go back into it. This time was very different. And there's still a lesson to be learned here. He immediately called everyone he knew. We're
Mm.
getting married again. I hadn't even agreed to marry him. I just said, maybe we can date. And from that point on, everything just went at like
Oh,
lightning speed.
mhm.
That was like fall of 2007 where this recoupling began. Were you going to say something before I
No,
go on?
I'll say that, it snowballed from there. But so I knew, of course, I didn't know you during the first marriage, or at the beginning of the first marriage, but definitely knew you during the, the coming together of the second marriage. And uh, one of the things I think that was different was you had this church family that was invested in this remarriage, a different type of pressure that you didn't have the first time. People wanting to see you guys get back together, and everybody has, their fairy tale, and oh, this is wonderful, and you know, oh, what a story. Oh, share that someone shared with you about the story that you would be able to tell.
Yeah, well, the church is a funny thing because again, he started coming around church to the church I attended. Now, he's not a church attendee, okay? And even though we were raised in the same denomination, he was never connected to it and not a very spiritual person in general. That's not a negative. That's just the truth. I think he wanted to be. I think there were times where he tried, but I just don't think that it ever connected for him, and still could. It could connect one day. Like, we don't know. Everybody has their own journey. But my point is, when people see someone coming to church, they give it way too many points. I wouldn't do it with my kids. I wouldn't be more impressed with somebody just because they came to church every single week. And this doesn't mean that he came with a negative intention. I'm just saying, just because that's a big part of why everybody was so just gung ho and jumped on the wagon. Not one person said, slow down. What happened in the first marriage? Why
Mhm.
did you divorce?
Mhm.
Somebody might have suggested counseling. We did go see a therapist one time, um, but it was short lived. I don't think we didn't sit long enough to think about what happened the first time. We
So
just
what was it? What were the things that pulled you in that made you say yes to a second time? Because you already had the knowledge of the first marriage. You knew who you were marrying. Most of us, it's one time, and maybe you're caught up in the fantasy, or maybe you're just thinking that this is what it's going to be, this is who I'm marrying, this is what I envision. But you knew. So what was it, knowing what you knew before and
Mhm.
had a divorce with this person? What were the things that made you say, I'm going to do this again?
Well, I thought he was different. He was very different. He was. He seemed to have matured a lot. And then again, the co-parenting vibe was fantastic. People
Okay.
thought we were dating. We got along so well, and we were not. He had a whole girlfriend, and so who I met once, and it was fine. It was just that we got along so well that I thought this is maybe this is a sign. Who gets along with their ex like this? I
Mhm.
should give it another try. So it was really just that. And there were other people. I've now learned there were mutual friends that he was talking to constantly about how he wanted his family back, et cetera, et cetera. And so they were talking to me too. And I felt pressure again to get it right.
Okay.
What I now know at 52, Charlena, is that I never had an independent thought in my mind that I ever even wanted to be married or have a family. I never thought about that when I was a little girl. I remember when I had my firstborn daughter thinking, now I never need to get married, or most, because I knew most women got married because they wanted to have a child. So I felt like, well, I have a child now. I don't ever need to do any of that. But that's why I now 1000% believe that it was all societal pressure around what my life should look like and what I should be doing, you know.
Mhm.
And that relationship got swept up into that and also kind of defined it. And that's why I don't push my daughters to get married, have kids. My daughter just told me today she's never going to have any children. I'm that doesn't bother me. This is her
Mhm.
life, her choice.
Mhm.
So anyway,
So tell me about, okay, the transition. So
yes,
that there you talked about, you just talked about and shared the things that the pressures, you will say, that led you to remarrying this person again. So what was it that caused you to make the decision that I need to leave this marriage?
the second marriage, right?
Yes.
Yes, I know, because we'll
For
never
the,
get there.
for the, for the second time. Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so I will add that the second marriage, we were together about 15 years
So
ish.
tell, that's a good thing. So how long were you married the first time? How long were you divorced? And then how long for the second marriage?
Right. Hold on, somebody's near my door. Okay, I had to mute. Oh, the joys of doing these things with a house full of people. Um, okay, so the we remarried in 2008. It was a lot happened that year because we remarried in February of 2008. My dear beloved father passed away in June. My father was essentially my only parent emotionally and psychologically, and it absolutely decimated me. And and I bought my first home in the fall of 2008. So it was a very busy year. Um, the second marriage. So we remarried in 2008 and divorced officially in February of 2023. So maybe I have my math wrong. I don't know. But at any rate, I think that the second is so complicated. Um, I think that if I had to put it into a nutshell, towards the end, I just knew I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't authentic, and I didn't want to die there. Those are all the thoughts that I had. Even though the marriage was not as bad as the first marriage at all, there were still things that happened. We just did not have a good connection at all. There was some abandonment that occurred, which you're aware of, and I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole with that. But just essentially, I was never taken care of. He was not an attentive partner for me. Maybe he's more attentive now, but I was constantly craving. I remember I used to say something nice to me. I would say that all the time. Just tell me something good about myself. Say something. My self-worth was still low because I felt like I this guy was not compatible to me at all. And he's still not even treating me well, you know. Um so it was in general the neglect was the neglect, and then the misbehavior, and there was still some infidelity, at least emotional infidelity, and just different social media stuff going on. But the abandonment that occurred when I was ill in 2021, when I coupled that with the fact that I had two children with him, because I ended up having another child, a son, and I was alone, and like taking care of myself essentially all the time. I just felt like I didn't really trust him if I were to get seriously ill, that he would actually be there for me. And that was another big part of it. And just the fact that he was still kind of trying to find himself. And I felt like even into retirement, I am still going to be taking care of all of the things.
Okay.
And but I felt a ton of guilt because the relationship was deeply codependent. So I felt responsible for him, and that if I leave, then he's going to be like, I went before I even told him, I was like looking up apartments for him and just do all the, none of that was my job, but I just wanted him to be okay. And so I
Mhm.
got a lot of guilt.
Mhm.
initially around doing it, but I knew that we weren't supposed to be together. And I felt like there may be someone out there who can love him more. Again, I still, even at the end, was not thinking about myself. Now I'm totally selfish. Selfish. But at the time, I kept thinking someone else is going to be able to give him all the love because I felt like I tried everything. And I kept thinking, I will do these things and then he will love me in the way that I need. And then I will fall more in love with him. And I would do these things, and the reciprocity was not there. It
And
wasn't there.
yes, and let me, say this. So we talked about this in the first podcast that, we're not here to bash our exes. We're just here to tell our story. And I do want to say that, you talked about some of the lack in the relationship, in the marriage, and you said that, okay, perhaps he wasn't this to you, or you didn't receive this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person is incapable of that. It just may mean that they're incapable of that in their relationship with you. So it isn't always such a slight on that person, like he could never be he's just not an attentive person.
Right.
No, he just wasn't attentive with me. And maybe in the next relationship, he will be attentive with that in that person. So again, not so much a slight on the person, but I think somebody in the chat said talk about,
Behaviors.
the
Yeah.
hate, right? So I just
Yeah.
want to make that point.
And you know what? What's crazy? Again, he have to be honest. He hates my guts so much right now. I don't think he believe anything that I'm saying. But I'm also I had a great meditation this morning, so I feel really I feel really balanced in this. But I really there. First of all, the negative thoughts that I do have about him, I don't want them to be true. I always felt that he had a huge heart,
Mm-hmm.
and that if he would just let a wall down, the love would just come flowing out. Now, having looked back, okay, it is, and when I say look back, I mean that in a genuine way. Like we used to do a video chat all the time. I don't think I told you this, but I about a month ago or so went into the archives of that chat and observed our communication. Like I watched a video that he sent me saying something and a video that I sent back to him saying something. And I saw a terrible part of myself. I
Mm-hmm.
was so condescending and mothering in my tone with him and the way I was explaining things. I was constantly trying to teach him something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not a partner. So it was like I was saying things like, well, I do it this way and it works for me. And I thought that because I had worked on my tone and I wasn't saying it in a fussy way and I wasn't name calling, I thought I was doing better. But
Mm-hmm.
now the interesting part of it, Charlene, is that even as I looked back on that, well, the other thing I saw is we talked over each other. Like I would have a long message I sent about my job and things going on and this and that. He would never respond to anything that I said. He would start talking about his job and what he had going on. And there was no cumulative conversation going on. You know how, like with your partner now, you guys, you talk about something, and then the next time you talk about it, you're on this level. And the next time you talk about it, you're on the, everything with us was flat all the time. There was no real listening, there was no real comprehension going on. However, while some people might look at that and say, oh, you should have gone to therapy or whatever, I look at it and realize this was never in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be. Yes, you're going to have communication challenges. Everybody's going to have to understand certain things, but you got to start from somewhere where you already kind of get what the other person is saying. And I say that because I think it's hard enough for men and women to understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't come into it with some sort of basic foundation of understanding each other's style, which I've learned now doesn't have to take it. It's like either it's there or it's not there. But if you don't start with the basics of that, you're going nowhere, man. It's just going to keep. And that's why it always felt like we were spinning, talking in circles around each other. There would be moments where he would really listen to me, and he might say something, um, but it was rare. Whereas me, I'm anal on the other side. I would sometimes listen to his things, and I would take notes.
Notes. Okay.
I had a whole Facebook group called Cara's Bags. and I was the only member in that group. Don't ask me why. I'm trying to survive all these years. And I would post how he was driving me crazy and things that were happening and da, 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 da. And one time years after that, I showed it to him and he was shocked. But
Mm.
but there was never any sustained change. And essentially I divorced because I realized it was never going to be any different than what it was, and that wasn't what I wanted anymore. All this rambling, that's what it comes down to. I realized this is never going to be any different than what it was, and I don't want to live here anymore. And then the other wake up call for me was when my daughter came home, and this is not her fault. I've told her this numerous times, but she said, and she told him, "You're a great dad, but a terrible husband."
Mm.
And because of the inattentiveness. And I had said the same thing to my mother at her age. I'll never forget it. She said it. I walked up these stairs right here very slowly, didn't say a word. I couldn't even speak. It hit me so hard. How have I repeated this?
Mhm.
Everything I said I was not going to do is exactly what happened. And my therapist told me, you were so focused on not marrying your father that you married your mother. And my mother was always inattentive to me. And my mother never showed care for me. And she and I have done a lot of work on our relationship. I still wouldn't want her to watch this because I think it would trigger her. But
Mhm.
when I was a small child, my mother, if I was sick, she just never really
Mhm.
attended to me. My
Yeah.
mother never told me about my body as a woman. My father did that. My father told me what to do about cramps and uh,
Mhm.
hygiene and all this kind of stuff. But my mother, because their relationship was so fractured, she parented my brother and he parented me, except that he also spent time with my brother and taught him things. And I don't recall very many one-on-one moments with my mother at all growing up, or like sage tons of pearls or any of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And when I was sick, my mother didn't care for me. When I was in the sixth grade, I fractured my leg at school, and when my mother picked me up, I told her I needed to go to the doctor, and she did not want to take me. She was like, "Oh, you're fine." She felt like I was being dramatic. I begged her. Like, she bought me a candy bar, like that would satisfy me. I begged her. She took me in, and I had a hairline fracture and had to wear a cast for 6 weeks. So there were just multiple instances when I had my children. My mother was did not come and like nurture me and take care of the baby. And it was never like that. And I was not upset at my mother until after my father passed away because he did so much.
Mhm.
I didn't notice the gap in my partner or in my mother until my father was gone. And that's why I took it so bad. It was like I had nothing.
Mhm.
I still feel like that sometimes, 16 years later.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I think but that's why I left. I just felt like I don't want to die here. And I want to add in one other thing, and I know we need to talk about the religious part of this, Charlena. But divorce is not a decision that most women make overnight. You
Mhm.
know, I in 2018 when we moved to Colombia, we lived out of the country for a while. And in Colombia, everything was dirt cheap. And we finally didn't have work anymore like that or anything. So I felt like all of his excuses to be attentive, to take me out on dates and things like that were moot. We had money in the bank. Everything was easy there. Like, they had this gorgeous park where for $60, they would do an entire picnic spread for you. I mean, the blanket, the table set up, all the food. You would choose your menu because it was so cheap there. And I told him about it. I think we went on one date in 5 months in a
Mhm.
beautiful city where everything was cheap. And so we'd been there since October. Christmas of 2018, I said, if he's not going to do it here, he's not
Mhm.
going to do it
Mhm.
anywhere.
Did you have conversations around that?
I said it a little bit here and
Did
there,
you
but
make your needs known?
he would tell me, "You're always telling me what I'm not doing."
Mm.
Like, I don't, I think at the end of the day, he was not interested in me, like
Mhm.
as a human being and as a person.
Mhm.
He was not curious about me. He was not enamored with me, which I think a man should be with a woman to a degree, right? So what happened is I sent my best friend a video message on the phone telling her I think I'm going to ask for a divorce. When we go back to the US, I want to be I want to be single. And he ended up getting in my phone that same night. I don't know why, but he got in my phone and watched the video, which is such an invasion, and woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning looking wild eyed and said, "So you're going to divorce me?" And I,
That's interesting because I could hear his voice when you said
right,
that. I
right.
could hear his
Let
voice.
me tell you, I was afraid. I immediately retreated. I was like, "Oh no." And I took it all back. I don't even know, like the person I am today, I'd be like, "Yeah, bruh." But back then, I was afraid. I know there was religious fear, but I don't really fully understand it myself. But anyway, that's why I ended up staying. I stayed after that because he would make me think that it was going to get better, and it would be like little marginal improvements. I don't know why he fought so hard to stay. Other than the fact that the relationship benefited him in a lot of ways. There were a lot of decisions and things he didn't have to do because we were together. But I think that I felt like I didn't fully love him, but it wasn't until we divorced that I realized he didn't fully love me either. And I was heaping all the blame on myself and feeling so guilty that I wasn't loving him in a certain way. But it wasn't, that's why the inattentiveness was there. Because I've been plagued for years. Like, why wouldn't he just do these like super basic things? I just don't think he was into me like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
And so that's very interesting, an interesting point because sometimes we want to bash each other because we're not getting what we want from the other person or what we feel that we need from the other person, when it's just really, it really comes down to something very simple, like we're just not the person for each other. It's that simple. It's really that simple. And as I shared the last time, was when you're truly in love with somebody, there's just certain things that you do naturally. You just naturally do those.
naturally do it.
And then there are things when you're not in love with somebody that you consciously can't even, you have to consciously think of trying to do those things. They don't come naturally. You have to work at
Yes.
them. And even things that you would do when you're in love with somebody that you wouldn't have to consciously think of, that they come naturally, you can't even do those in with someone that you're not in love with, because they don't even come to you. They come from an organic place. And if you don't have that, you don't have that. And instead of realizing that that's what the case is, we bash each other. You're not doing this for me. You don't do this. You're not that. And when it's just simply, hey, what was that book? He's just not that into you.
Not that into you.
It's that simple. She's just not that into you. He's just not that into you. That's why they're not doing all the things that you really, really need. Because when you get that person that's into you, that's digging you down in your dirty drawers, you don't have to tell them. Like, they're just going to do those things that let you know this person is really digging me, feeling me, and is really into me. So, and and we run the risk of bashing each other, making each other feel like they're the bad guy, you're this, you're that, you're not this, you're not that, when it really isn't that. It's they're not that person with you.
Yeah.
Not that person with you. You're not that person with me. But you could be all of those things to somebody else.
Yeah. That's so good. I think there are times where you still have to push yourself a little bit. So because we got to make it clear here. There are times where you're not going to want to do something and your partner's going to want to do it and you have to do it anyway. But that should not be the dominant.
Right.
If you have to force yourself all the time on everything, like I used to have lists. I was so dogged. It's like, okay, he says I don't ask about his day enough. So I would make notes. I would use calendar reminders, like asking about his day. I would track the sex schedule, hands down. How often am I, make sure I'm getting, okay. It seems like 2 to 3 times a week keeps him in a good place. That's what I'm going to do. I had all of this regimented stuff, and I would shower. I'd be praying like, God help me to get there. I don't really want to do this, but I'm gonna. It was just too much. But
Mhm.
I'm sitting here with you right now, And if my sweetheart sends a text 911, this show is over.
I know.
But this is the thing. I know, we're going to talk about that on a future podcast, but it has taught me and reminded me what it is supposed to feel like naturally. Like I don't care about ever getting married again and don't want to. But if he was like, we need to, I'd be like, I trust him just that much. And so it's just different when things are happening
And you
naturally.
right, and you're right. So let me just add this. There is in any relationship, like in any relationship, everything that your partner needs and what you should be to them um doesn't come naturally. Um you do have to work at it. Even in the best relationships, you
Yeah,
have to work. They're work, right? So
yeah,
I make it clear that even in the best relationships, you still have to work for it. But if you find yourself, in a relationship where, these Cara said, the majority of things that should be done in a relationship, like you're having to work and
yeah.
consciously, okay, make sure I do this, make sure I do that. That's
And well, my sweetheart hates the word work, so I say effort. Are you willing to make an
effort.
effort in this area here? And I find that I talk to him so much differently, and just in general. So but I just let me say I don't regret any part of either marriage at all. And I've spent years in regret when I was still in it. But now there's so much work that I did in that relationship that prepared me to be a better person in general. And there were points where I felt like this isn't going to work, but maybe I can get use the effort I'm applying to make it work. I'm going to build my character in certain ways. Like I learned to watch my tongue. I used to have a challenge with how I would talk to him, which is common. A lot of black men in particular go on about that and how we talk to them and that kind of thing. And I took a lot of time to work on my tone. I realized that I didn't want my daughters talking to a man
Mhm,
like that. And
mhm,
so he didn't, certain things I would say in front of other people. He never wanted me to point out, which I think a lot of men are like this as well, to point out an issue of his in front of other people. And so, and I would have to remind him, when was the last time I've done that? When he would bring it up, and he couldn't even remember because it'd been years. I'd
mhm.
removed that behavior from my whole personality. And so there are things you can learn, even in a difficult relationship, that can help you when you're on the other side. Use those things as ingredients to better yourself. The bad, and the good. It's all fuel for your future self. You know. That's so good. Um, Somebody in the comments is talking about the window, and that's why I put that. I'm going to put that comment back up there because when it was first shared with me, this concept of being the window. Wait a minute, let me put this other one up instead. It was talking about the remarriage
Mhm.
and that it was the window for other people who were hoping for reconciliation. And I never agreed with that. But I do think that our stories are a window for people who can relate and have had a similar experience. And I needed somebody to give me permission to let me know that, like we talked about last week, divorce was an option
Mhm.
because this is my life. This is my dash, meaning the time between my date of birth and date of death. And we die at the end of this.
Mhm.
I deserve to live that in between space and in a way that I want. But the religious stuff, Charlene, I felt like I'm not going to have any happiness here on earth. My happiness is coming in heaven. So I was a martyr. And I had accepted that. I felt like my mother was a martyr for my father. She sacrificed so that we could grow up with our dad in the home. And I would wake up every day, set myself on fire, and get busy running around trying to make everybody happy all the time.
Even from
And
a
I ended up creating codependent patterns with myself, my husband, my children, the team I manage at work, everybody.
That's against biblical principle, because we are to live life, this life that we're here on this earth, and live it more abundantly. And you know what? So we are, we're at 59 minutes.
Yeah,
And
and I was going to say we can go over a little bit. Like we're trying really hard to limit ourselves to an hour, but I mean, we can still
But
wrap up in
I
the.
will tell you. So, what I would like for us to do, because I shared my story, you've shared your story, and what I'd like for us to do next is, and we can take some time during this week to talk about maybe some takeaways, things that we have learned through our experience, that we can share. Because we gave the history, and now that we're on the other side, what are things that we've learned from this experience that might help someone else in terms of their journey if they find themselves needing to end their marriage for their own um, survival. When I say survival, I'm not just talking of physical survival, but a mental and an emotional and a spiritual survival. What can we share with others that we've learned and how we've been able to be on the other side, what the other side looks like,
Navigating the other
maybe
side.
what we would have done differently in the process
Yeah.
that perhaps others can take, and it can make their journey a lot easier for them.
Yeah, and we are also seeking other stories. And I don't, even though my main audience is women, and that's my passion. I think it's super important to have the male perspective. And so there are a couple of guys that I'm chatting with a bit to see will they be interested in coming on the show and kind of sharing their post-divorce journey because it's so different for men. Like
Mhm.
women, there's even memes about it. The men are crying when it's over. Women are like, yeah, because we cried during the marriage, right? So we're like, I'm free. Um, so I want to make sure we get their perspective and then talk about what does life look like after divorce? What does dating look like after divorce? Boundaries. We have a lot of great information to share and definitely want to start adding some other guests and adding some guests who don't necessarily agree with us so that we can hear from them and their perspective. So
And you know what I think would be good too, Cara, is
yeah,
you and I both, we were the catalyst for ending our marriages. We initiated that. We chose that. That was what we wanted. I think it would be good to have someone who didn't, that they were not in agreement with the divorce, didn't want the divorce, and they're on the other side, and what the journey was for them, and how are they now on the other side of this? How did they find their healing and their place of peace on the other side of this? And it's a healing for both parties involved. Both parties have to go through a process of healing in order to be in a healthy place on the other side. I think
yeah.
that's a great story to hear.
I've got a couple people that I'm thinking of. I just have to see are they in a place where they're ready to share pretty transparently, and I think so. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think so. That was hard. Can I just say that? That was really hard.
Felt like you were in a therapy session, a good therapy session. Remember, like, so when you would go through therapy, and when you have a really good therapy session, you come out of that session feeling like you are completely drained. Like everything
Yeah,
that's in you is just like, oh.
I
So
know. I
yeah.
think I'm glad it was hard because there's I zipped through that and I really feel like I did a lot of talking, but I zipped through that. But there is a lot of pain
Mhm.
wrapped up in all that time and those years, and it's not all a result of things that he did. I also think more about what I allowed and how little I thought of myself,
Mhm.
and I feel like, if anything, one of the things I learned is you do have to establish a foundation and boundaries and things with someone early because maybe it could have been less damaging if I'd been super firm on certain things. But when your self worth is low and you feel like you need this legitimacy of a relationship, you will tolerate certain things. Or if you feel religiously like I must stay here no matter what, think about the license that gives. And I don't think he thought about this or took advantage of it at all. But there are partners who, because they know divorce is not an option and their partner's not going to leave no matter what, they clown and act just as
Yeah,
crazy. And
talk
she's just
about
going to keep on forgiving, or he keep letting it go because of this. And it just does so much damage. And I remember hearing Dr. Phil say years ago that it's better for children to come from a broken home than to live in one,
Mhm.
right? And that I couple that with what another close friend of mine said when I was being really harassed, is how it felt, by a very religious person that I grew up with, telling me about that I shouldn't get a divorce and all of this. And that's why I don't mind going over time, Charlene, because I do think this part is
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Take license.
telling me that, I'm going to suffer because of this. And they went on to tell some terrible story about somebody who got cancer because of what, like, this person did not take time to seek to understand my story.
Mm,
And even though they were a longtime friend, they didn't know the intimate details of my life. And there was no moment of holding space and compassion for what's brought you to this moment. They
mhm,
didn't even say, let's come together and pray about it. It was
mm,
just, you're wrong for doing this. And I think that they tried to make me feel like there was some statute of limitations on infidelity if I was going to use that as a reason, which that was not my reason. And so it was like, you need to, you don't have justification for this, so you're just stuck there. And
mhm,
if I was not in therapy at the same time, that fear would have caused me to stay anyway and to backtrack out of my decision. And
mhm,
when it had already taken so much courage, that's the thing. That's one of the key things that I want to leave here. It takes courage to
mhm,
just call it.
mhm,
It takes courage to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. I couldn't even, I never did really say it. I went into a quiet space for like 4 days after a therapy session where the therapist just pulled my it was like I was an Indian and she was scalping. She pulled everything.
mhm.
Just I had this was the first session with her. And I went to her in this deep codependency and said, I'm trying to figure out a way to accept my husband as he is. And she said, okay, well, tell me about your relationship. And I recounted, and I was like, yeah, he doesn't do this, but it's me, because by this time, between him and some of the programming from my mother, I felt like I was the problem. I'm too harsh. I'm too this. So I had this list of things that was wrong with me. And if I could just stop doing these things, then I would get this treatment. I was constantly chasing being treated a certain way. And so I went down the list for my therapist and all the things I had on my plate. And she just started breaking me down. Well, what are you receiving from this relationship? No one had ever asked me that. No one ever said, why are you here? What are you getting? It just felt selfish. And I think especially from a religious perspective, we are taught that self-care is selfish. Looking out for yourself, taking care of you're not supposed to be real, you're not really supposed to think those thoughts. And so when she finished all that, and she was like, what are you, she said, I think at the end of it, first of all, she was one who told me, you married your mother. And then she said to me, so when are you going to be done raising him?
Mm,
And I was like, what?
mm,
And I think that um again, I want to be sensitive with this, so because I don't know how he's operating now, but I think that I came in like a mom and I basically did everything, and then I struggled to respect his partnership because I was doing too much. And I don't know if he would have been able to do more if I just stopped. I have no idea. But when she said that to me, it stopped me in my tracks. I didn't talk to him for 4 days after that. I slept in my office. I just kind of shut down. I needed to process that because when she said that, that's when I realized I'm gonna have to leave.
mm,
But I didn't have the language. I just couldn't say anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I'm saying this out of order because I need to share what you told me that summer. So this was November of 2022. And in the summer, I had almost had an affair. So this is so important because I know a lot of women who've had affairs. Okay. And so um, I had someone who had been a great friend to me, and he was wonderful and he was very handsome. And he would always say, Cara, you know, you're brilliant. Um, and we worked together. And nothing happened, no physical contact whatsoever. It was almost like we agreed that this is neither one of us is going to do anything like this. It just did not go far at all. But I was so devastated, and I called you from my car crying, and I just remember that was the moment I realized how deep the neglect was. It wasn't just my ex-husband's neglect of me, it was also my neglect of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and and longing for connection. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, it had been decades since I'd had real connection because he and I had never had it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just at such a low. And so I had said that to the therapist in that session as well, that, well, I almost had an affair. And she said, of course you did. She was very animated. She was like, of course you did. You know, so yeah, so it was 4 days. I slept in my office. I think like the second day in, he said, what's going on? And I said, I'm not ready to talk about it yet because I had a big work presentation. And one thing about me, I'm not your average chick. I will compartmentalize things in a heartbeat. I'm never going to mess up my money. And I knew that I could not unpack and have I didn't know how long this was going to go on with him. I needed to focus and get through this big in person presentation I had to do. And so I told him we will talk on the 3rd, and that's why I remember the date because I had that presentation. And that day, I was laying in my office, laying down that evening, and he came in and sat down and said, "What's going on?" And I said, "What do you think is going on?" I mean, this is verbatim. And he said, "You're done?" And I said, "Yes, I'm done."
Wow.
That was it. And then, and I'm gonna say this because I'm 52 and I don't care what anybody thinks. We went outside and smoked a joint. Okay, that's probably the last peaceful moment we had. That was it, you know. and and that's how we met. So you know, it kind of made sense. And you know,
That reminds me of, this just came to mind. I forgot about this. So when the day of my divorce, uh, my ex-husband and I went to the courthouse, and we the divorce, stamped the decree, you're divorced. We went out to dinner afterwards.
yeah,
Crazy,
yeah,
crazy. But
yeah,
so you said something a little earlier, and you are so right. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of bravery. And I also want people to know that, making the decision isn't easy. As you're, listening to Kara's story, it is not easy. It's painful. It's a death. People don't get married saying, oh, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get divorced. No, especially from our background, you get married and you like want this to be until death, death do us part. And I remember it was maybe a couple of days after my divorce was final. I remember exactly where I was. I was on the QT, I was at the QT gas station on Highway 85. It was raining cats and dogs. I pulled in to get some gas, and I sat in my car and I just boo-hooed like a baby at the death of my marriage. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because this life that I had imagined and wanted and expected to have was over. And so the death of a marriage isn't easy. Even if you're the person that initiates it, it's a lot. It's a lot. And people will tend to think that the person who initiated, oh, they just, no, if you valued it, if you cared about the person, if you valued your family, it is truly a death. And so I just want to commend you, Cara. I was with you through your journey, and I know how difficult it was for you. I know the heart to heart conversations that we had, the tears that you cried, and everything that you went through. I know that at that time had a love and still have a love for your ex husband, and so I want to commend you and thank you, for being so open and transparent and sharing your story with everyone today.
You're gonna make me cry because when you said that, I realized, I do really care about him, and I think that um the fact that we are so, you know at odds, um it is still hurtful. um and I think that, that's something that we should definitely talk about in the future, because um it's hard. It's hard. I'll just say that. And then, I cried for all last year. I
Mhm.
had never cried so many tears. Most of my tears were for myself, I'll be honest, and I needed to cry for myself. I cried for my 21-year-old self, and the shame that I felt,
Mhm.
um, having a child out of wedlock, and the shame that I brought on my family, and then all the decisions that came after that. Um, I cried for the type of mother that I wasn't able to be, because I was constantly working on the marriage. All my energy went there. My children were very neglected. Um, for just so many reasons. And I cried for the death of the legacy, which you and I've talked about numerous times. It breaks my heart to this day that if I ever do have grandchildren, they won't have that legacy.
Mhm.
I knew what I was sacrificing to choose my own life, and it felt very selfish. And I don't have any guilt around it anymore, but I can see how someone who hasn't done enough healing work would carry guilt.
Mhm.
And I don't think that you carry guilt anymore, right? We just because you made a decision in your 20s doesn't mean you have to die there. I
Mhm.
just We don't want everybody should, if you can stay in your marriage, you totally should. We should have
Mhm.
repeated that, Charlene, because we said it last week. We're
Right.
very pro
Right.
marriage.
Very much so.
We wish that we never had to be on this side. However, on the airplane they tell you to put your own mask on first. And I know for me, I never made sure I was breathing.
Mhm.
And the danger in it is, my children never saw me being taken care of. And to this day, they don't realize that I need to be taken care of. And they are still used to seeing me overdo and expecting that. And when I don't perform in those ways, and my ex, that's some of the abrasion that we've had, is still expecting me to overdo because I created these codependent patterns. And it's like I'm trying to extricate myself, bring myself back. And one of the things that I will talk next time, I think we should also talk about, like, how did we heal through it. But I know that in one of the processes I did this meditation, and I'm listening to a voice. I don't know what it's going to say next. And she said, I call myself back from all of the places and spaces I've ever been in. It shattered me, because when I heard that voice in my head, I'm listening with my headphones. It's like I visualized pieces of myself spread out over the past 30 years, all the bad partner choices, and, you know, uh, promiscuous behavior I had after I had my daughter. I just, it's like I saw pieces of myself out there, and I was trying to pull it all back together
Mhm.
to to come back to me.
Mhm.
And I think that's very common for women of our age when we say, I'm trying to find myself. That's
Mhm.
part of what we're talking about. You've put pieces of yourself out there, and you're trying to bring it all back together in this reparenting, rebirth process.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yes, darling. Thank you.
So we're going to close, but I want you to share closing thoughts. And then I have a very, very short story. And then we're going to do our breathing exercises.
So listen, I think I already shared my closing thoughts. Thank you for sharing. There's there's so many layers to divorce that we don't even, sometimes we just don't even realize. You know, we talked about the influence of our parents and who they were as individuals and who they were in their marriages or even their lack of marriage, and how that impacts us. There's so much that divorce can uncover in us that really has nothing to do with the marriage itself. And uh, we have explored a lot of that, much more to do. But again, I just want to thank you, Cara, again for sharing your story and for being so transparent and open. And the tears are a beautiful thing, they're a part of the journey. Thank you again for your transparency.
Oh, thank you, honey. You know, I believe in tears now after years of repressing my emotions,
Mhm.
part of which was survival. I believe in tears. If I had some tissue, I would have let it go. I don't have any tissue over
I
here.
need more tears. My husband teases me because I'm just not a crier.
You're
Uh,
not.
I'm not.
But I think, but you're a
I'm
hospice
emotional.
nurse. Let's be honest. A lot of that has to do with your profession. You see a lot of sadness, and so I think in a way you are a little
It's
desensitized.
self-preservation. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But yeah. So
Um,
take it away, lady.
as we close, I'm going to do something that I do with my son now when we need to have difficult conversations. We go to my den downstairs, which I also call my sanctuary, and I have him light a paper incense. You can find these on Amazon, and they're little strips of paper. You put it in a zigzag pattern like this, and then on an incense stand. It smells absolutely incredible, and
Put
it
a
just
link.
creates.
Put a link.
Okay, I may try to find the link. So I'm going to set that there. I use that sometimes during my meditation practice as well. And I want to share a very short story with you guys that I'm going to try to get right. I just heard this last week and I'm going to try to repeat it from memory. So this is long, long ago. There was a father and son who had a farm, and they had a horse, and the horse was very critical to their financial resources. You know, pets and livestock was a really big deal back then. And so the son one night left the gate open and the horse ran off. And, you know, this was their livelihood. So he was really upset, nervous to tell his father. He goes to his father and says, Dad, the horse is gone. You know, what are we going to do? And his father said, Who's to say what is bad and what is good? Well, the next day, the horse came back with a pack of wild horses with it.
Mm.
And so they opened up the gate and all of these horses flooded in, closed the gate. And the son said, Oh my goodness, Dad, we're rich now. We have all these horses. And the father says, Who's to say what is bad and what is good? And so after that, the son goes riding on one of these wild horses, falls off, and breaks his leg. And he's devastated. Now he can't help on the farm in the same ways. And the father says to him, Who's to say what is bad and what is good? Not too long after that, the political climate changed and a war broke out. And they showed up to draft the son. But because of his leg injury, he couldn't go. And the father said, Who's to say what is bad and what is good? And I loved that story because things happen that may look bad, but it
Mm.
could actually be good. And
Mhm.
sometimes things happen and they look good and they could actually be bad. And so that is my phrase. I'm a word fiend. I'm going to put that somewhere where I can see it every day so that when trials come, and things happen, I'm going to call them things, or like my spiritual mother says, unpreferred experiences are going on. Who's to say what is bad and what is good?
Mhm.
We don't know. And like my friend reminded me, the scripture says, all things work together for good. So I put those two together, and that's what I use now to kind of help me frame my thinking. Who's to say what is bad and what is good? You never know. All right, let's get ready to breathe it out.
Mhm.
We're going to do this at the end of every show, and I'm going to encourage anyone who's watching to do this. Breath work is something that I started doing, I can't even, at least 5 or 6 years ago, not with any consistency, but it really helps you to calm down, bring your body out of an anxious state. If you're struggling to concentrate or focus on something, or there's a trial or a big decision, especially that you need to make, doing some very quiet breath work will really help you get the clutter out of your mind. And while you're breathing, especially women, your thoughts are all over the place, blah, blah, blah. You can think in a million things. You can have a phrase in mind or just a thought that you keep telling yourself quietly to help yourself stay focused. So this time we're going to do two breaths, Charlene. Okay. Last time we did one. Eventually we want to get to three next week, and then we'll do three breaths at the end because it really does take that long for us to stop all this conversation. There's a lot going on. Everything we need to do when we get off of this show. I have to go do these 12 things, but it's okay to take a few minutes and catch your breath, right? All right.
Mhm.
So again, make sure you're sitting straight up with your make sure your spine is erect. You want everything to all your breath to flow as it should. So that spine needs to be erect, but you're also relaxed. We're going to do two breaths. We're going to do two breaths, and we're going to do a count of four. Inhaling through the nose for four, holding for four, and then exhaling for four through pursed lips, like that. Very important to do a slow exhale because you will your then your mind will be focused on controlling the breath to make sure that it comes out slowly instead of thinking about the laundry and what are you having for dinner, all those other things. And I'm going to talk us through the two breaths, do my own little breaths, but I'll guide you through it. Okay. And I would invite you to close your eyelids as well and just breathe normally, because the first thing you want to do is just catch your breath and get your body calmed down. All right. And this is where some good incense or a candle or something like that can really also help you just feel good and feel relaxed. All right. We're almost ready. Relax. Relax your shoulders and your belly. And inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath. 3, 2, 1, and release. 1, 2, 3, 4, and relax. You can let the rest of the air out. Keep your eyelids closed and just relax. Anything in your body that's tight, let that go. Your shoulders, your tongue and your mouth might be tight. It needs to relax. Your belly, back still straight. And then when we do the second and final breath, the thought that I offer to you, you can think whatever thought you want to think. One that I use frequently is I'm safe in his everlasting arms. I'm safe, especially if I'm experiencing anxiety. I will repeat that to myself. I am safe in his everlasting arms. And so you may use that thought as we go into the second breath, giving you a chance to relax, catch your breath, find it, and get ready to inhale through your nose. And inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath. 2, 3, 4, and release through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, and relax. Just relax for one or two more seconds before we open our eyelids. Just relax, relax. And when you're ready, open your eyelids and come back. All right. That was good. Charlena, I am so thankful to you for today. You really got me through that. If I was on here by myself, I would have been rambling. I probably would have. I hope that there's someone out there who got value from this. I hope that if you missed last week where Charlena shared her story, you will go back and check that out. You can find that on my Coach Cara Facebook page. You can also find that on my YouTube page. I will be working to rename and rebrand those channels. Um, I thank you guys for joining us. Please share this content, not because we're trying to gain anything. We're both doing fine right now. We just want to help if it's just one person. And so I strongly encourage you to share this with anyone you think needs to hear this information. And I thank you for joining us on the show today. We will see you next Sunday, 11 o'clock. My heart. Love you
Bye.
guys. Bye.